Thank you.
How are you doing?
Fantastic. I'm always great. Like every day, you have different perspectives on things, and
Yeah.
I've chosen to be an eternal optimist. Jumped into entrepreneurship back in like 2003, right after high school.
Wow, right out of high school?
Yeah, right out of high school. I was supposed to go to Tuskegee University. Been accepted. I was the kid who was kind of slipping through the cracks in high school because I was intelligent enough and creative enough to know how to be a low C student, 2.1 GPA, but I scored the second highest on the ACT. Like, how does that happen? My class, and it was like I was gaming the system. So when it came time to go away to college, I got accepted to every school that I applied to, but I didn't get qualified for scholarships because of the GPA piece.
Because of how they grade, yeah.
How they grade you. And so, and it's crazy. And then you can't really get a lot of financial aid unless a parent does it. And so my dad, hadn't really been around at all during my upbringing, but at the last couple of years of, my high school career, he, tried to kind of step in. It was like, I'll cover your unmet need. It was like 10 grand. And he was getting, talked to him on the phone, visited the campus, he went through all that, got everything to go. And, talked to my dad the night before, and it's like, okay, I'll be down with the check in the morning. Morning came, cars packed, ready to shoot down to Alabama, and no dad. And then it was like the next day, no dad. And the next day, no dad. And it's just like, my mom was like, I guess, you have to go enroll to community college. I guess you're not going to Tuskegee. And it was like, all right. So plan B, I really didn't have one, but this is like, dumped into it head first. And so it was like, well, I'm not, I've never been a kid to like look at the other side of things, like on the illicit side. So I'm like, I know that's not my path.
Yeah.
But like, I want something more than just working for somebody because I have a lot of ideas. My dad is an engineer by profession, and very creative and has patents and all these things to his name. And that's something I carried where I can think anytime somebody presents a problem, my first thought is that like my mind starts working on the solution before I can even really show any type of emotion, where a lot of times it might come off cold, but my mind just goes straight into the problem solving. And so over time, it took me to realize that one, I was a generalist, avid readers. I read so many subjects and absorbed so much information that it became like a muscle, like anything else, that it was easy to do. But I didn't know that was valuable because I had all these interests, and I had friends, one of which is on the call, where he knew from, I always talk about him specifically, where it's like he knew from the beginning he wanted to be an architect. Like first grade, he knew he wanted to be an architect, fifth grade, sixth grade.
I'm baffled by kids who know at such an early age what
they want to do.
That is the path. I'm baffled by it, but I'm in awe of it as well. I'm like, really?
Exactly.
I wanted to be Wonder Woman and a teacher and FBI agent. I mean, I don't know, but I feel like I achieved all of those on some level.
On some level. And it's like, that's the thing, those skill sets that we have, not knowing what to really do with them.
Yeah.
I realize that there's a lot of Black and brown people like that, where they're doing what they have to do, not what they want to do. So that happened with the college thing. And, I went to community college, and that was okay. But it was like, this still isn't like really giving me, like, what I see at the end of that, that's not what I'm aspiring for. Like the money thing was never really a huge thing. Like I didn't grow up with, a whole lot of wealth. My mom made sure we had everything we needed. And so it was a good balance.
Yeah.
But, it taught us like the value of things and like, how to take care of things. So there was no like being greedy like that. That wasn't part of our household. Like my mom was giving me, she had her last, but somehow there was always enough, and it was that tithing. And so I learned those ways.
Make it stretch.
You got to make it stretch. And so that's what we do, that grit. And I'm like, but a grit, nobody really values it until they're on the business side. And it's like, you do it on the, when it's on the Black and brown side, just surviving. Like they call it lean. I'm like, so what are Black folks living and brown folks living if not a lean lifestyle? So it's like, we know how to do that better than anybody, but because of the lack of access, and the lack of make that connection, make that leap.
Yeah.
And so through all that, eventually it got to a point where it was like, well, I know I want to start some businesses. I started studying. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Right after that happened with the college thing,
that is such a good book. Yeah.
The light bulb went off, and it was like this entrepreneur thing people keep talking about. I want to do this. I want to know about real estate, and I want to know about credit, and I want to know about the stock markets, and entrepreneurship. I want to get to the B and I side of the quadrant, and that put me on like a whole path where I've been in different ventures, seen a lot of different places as a result of that, connect with a lot of different people. And it's a world that I feel like more of us would access if we knew that we were already doing that in the hustles that we do, is surviving. We're already entrepreneurs.
You know what's so crazy? You've really broken down a lot of, like, I think the steps that, I mean, you could actually teach on this. Like what you just broke down right now, you could actually create a curriculum and teach on it. And I don't mean teach in a way where you're educating, but I think oftentimes in our community, we just need to be reminded of how innovative, how creative, and how the ability we have to execute with precision. All of the things that you shared right now, with us being able to take nothing and make it into something, and that something is not only sustainable, but it's been copied. It's copied and reproduced and made into a machine that is oftentimes used against us, if we're being really straightforward. But being able to go back and say, my brother, my sister, you have everything that is needed in order to succeed as an entrepreneur. And you can work for a 9-to-5 and still have that entrepreneurial mindset to build out while you're bringing the income in, right? So that you don't have that kind of fear of lack, or, I mean, we know that fear is real because when the bill collector comes, you know, you got to pay or get out. But I think the value of what you are sharing is so, you are fully equipped to stand up whatever idea you have. You just need to be strategic about it, which means you're going to have to write down your vision. You're going to have to look at prioritizing and to your point, you know, carving certain behaviors or spending habits out of your day-to-day life so that you're able to, you know, set yourself up financially for whatever it is you're building.
Indeed. And that's a culture. That's a mindset. A lot of people don't understand that is really the primary difference, is that we do it out of a needs-based standpoint and out of a want-based. And that's why
we're in survival mode.
Exactly.
And we're out of that, as opposed to, no, this is ingenuity.
Exactly. Necessity is the mother of invention. Like, you know, we create, and there's other forms of capital. So we talk about financial capital and we focus so much on that we're willing to exchange time for that. But there's so many other forms of capital that are monetized that we bring to the table, but we don't control. So like cultural capital, which are like the songs and the dances and all those things. That's something that's monetized to the point where the most successful genre and the most popular genre in the world is rap. Like it overtook rock in 2017. A lot of people don't know, on the Billboard charts, for the first time since they started keeping track, something, you know, finally surmounted rock music, and it was rap. The conversation we had at the barbershop was like, we need to really address why that's happening and stop it at some point. Otherwise, we're getting the same old thing and crying about it. And I'm like, at the end of it, we have the capital. We have all 9 forms of capital that are monetized on our behalf because we don't step up and take care of our own business or run our own race.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think right there, what you're talking about change the narrative for how we see ourselves securing wealth for ourselves and our family, right? So talk a little bit about that. What is it that you are building with Trep House that's going to help address that hustle grind until I can get retirement and that's going to be it, as opposed to I'm going to work this 9-to-5. I'm going to put stock in this area. I'm going to invest in this area. I'm going to, you know, build out in real estate, whatever the case may be that you're looking to put your funds in. But talk a little bit about how you're changing the narrative for how our community is understanding.
Absolutely. So I think a lot of it comes down to, we hear them in the business world, you know, they talk about culture. And if, you know, you juxtapose that against, like, you know, the culture of like a community of people based off of race or nationality, it's no different. So if you merge those cultures, then people feel more readily open to stepping into the business world because they don't feel like they have to lose themselves. I think a lot of it is Black people cling to our culture so much, we feel like we'll lose our identity to have to go into the corporate mindset. And the fact is, like, you have to clean up, you have to, present yourself in a certain way so you can be received well. But it's like you have to learn to more effectively communicate. So I'm not asking you to stop cussing because I'm trying to control you, but it's like you're not getting your point across. You're just expressing emotion right now. So, like, yes, I know it's from trauma and drama, based responses that we're receiving, but we have to start to, look at what does it mean to be a Black professional, a Black owner, a Black investor, and what resources do we have available to us now that can be used in such a manner. And so, like, asset-based community development is like a technical term that's been used, and it's usually more in like a community development context, like, a social impact context, kind of like a charity type of mindset. But if you look at the creative economy model or the innovation economy model, like, it literally says that your creative capital pro at, and when you combine all the different aspects of yourself, only you can uniquely provide that service in the way that you provide it. How do you, recognize that? How do you organize that? And how do you mobilize that? And a lot of people never made those connections. So we may be amazing at different things, and just because we've never been shown how, if you package it in a slightly different way, you put a different type of wrapping on it in a different bow, it now looks like, a Gucci belt is still a regular belt, just with like Gucci's brand on it.
Exactly.
The belt doesn't give you superpowers, so why am I paying 100 times as much for like that versus just a regular leather belt? Time, it's like you're a brand too. You have the ability to create your own brand with all this social media that people are digesting. You can literally run a business from this device that we're all on this call on. In most cases, some people might be on a laptop, but for most of us, this device is capable of like running a multi-million-dollar business.
Absolutely.
And our creativity, TikTok, we go viral, all these things, like we see it happen all the time. And it's like, but why does that only happen in like these rare cases where it's like finding a diamond in the middle of the street? Like, why can't it just be the overwhelming like reality for most of us? And it's a mindset thing. So Trep House is meant to be a super hub that provides, incubation, acceleration services, access to funding, personal development or founder development, professional development. If you aren't a founder and you're someone who provides a service to founders, at the end of it, we're all exchanging money is now, built a prototype of and started to reproduce, or we're taking a service and somebody figured out how to offer, in a more systematic and like repetitive way. So why not whatever it is that you do well? So it's meant to bring those resources to the table where it can help you through that process, not only in the service providers, but more importantly, the mindset, because once you can kind of shift that mindset, you start to see opportunity where you once only saw, the patient, and it makes it to where you have a different set of lenses on.
Yeah. I love what you stand for and what Trep House stands for because of several reasons. One, you are providing a hub where the services necessary to scale their business. But the other piece of it that I think oftentimes is missing is the educational piece, the overall education of understanding your personal brand, your personal assets. I was on a call, Cafecito, 2 days ago, and I was talking with a young woman who started her own e-commerce business actually when she was like 8 or 9 years old. And this is how she started. Her mama was like mamas, right? So her mom and there would be leftovers. And she would put them aside, and her mom would pack it up and say, okay, you taking this to school, right? Because, she ain't letting her eat that nasty old school food. So her friends would be oohing and ahhing over it. What did she do? She was like, She went and would repackage it and then sell it. Certain things she sell for $1, other stuff she sell for $2. But so cool. But she understood at that early age the value. And it was because she saw it in her household. Her mother, while she worked her 9 to 5 with the state, she would sell Tupperware on the side. She sold Avon, all these different things, right? So she saw this kind of entrepreneurial spirit in the household, and she thought I could do this too. And from there is what got her. But she always knew that she was her own brand, that she had the control over how that narrative put out in the world. And so if she was able to control that, and companies, corporate America found the value in it, then why wasn't she valuing it at the same level that they were, but they just weren't compensating her in the way that they should. So she started building on the side her e-commerce building businesses out of that. But I would dare say if there was a Trep House around at the time, or a We the Plug around at the time, that was providing education, after school programming in the school, you know, shoot, she could have been 15 years later popping, you know, she could have been popping within a year or within 2 years, you know. And I think that's where, for me, I get excited about the work that you're doing, and other founders who are part of We the Plug programming, is we're building something not just for our community, our adult community, but we're building things that are going to go back into the next generations to come. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. Older brother was like my dad growing up, and he's a software engineer. Like, I don't know anybody, you know, on the technology side that I exalt more, because of, like, you know, he used that to keep me out of the streets, in addition to my mom being, like, you know, one of them mamas where it's like street lights on, don't let it happen. You already know.
Don't do it. Don't test them.
Don't do it. Like, just know that discipline. So almost like, you know, you get that military experience in the Black household. And then I had the, you know, the tech background with my older brother. You know, for Christmas he would buy like a tower and all the peripherals, you know, the motherboard, the video card, the RAM, the hard drive. So it's like,
but he was giving you all this
stuff. The operating system. I mean, it was a computer in my house from the time that I was like able to like remember being in my house. So it was always technology. Like, it was normal. It was like we
born into it. Yeah, because you graduated in 03?
03. So, you know, 1991, 92, like, there's a computer in the house. Like, we had a Packard Bell computer. I remember we got it out the package. We hooked it up to, you know, 56K internet. And we were just like, we were calling people from the computer. Like in 93, 94, it's like, what the hell? Like, it was mind blowing. For my peers, you know, I grew up in the west side of Dayton. I'm like, you know, I went to like public school. Like, our school district is 2 out of 22 as far as like their academic report card. But, you know, because my mom had us in such, you know, all she bought was books. We didn't have cable. There wasn't real internet. Like, this is like still just text based. You have to be a real nerd to even know what websites to go to, because there are no search engines internet. Like, you know, way back, so it was that real gritty. I was just devouring knowledge from like a, you know, a book standpoint. Then when like internet came, I was just like, I can devour more knowledge without having to go to the library and check out 8 books. Like, that's a no-brainer. Like, so I've been into it so long, that exposure and opportunity, it gave me access that a lot of my peers around me didn't have. And I was able to make that distinction very early, where it was like from like 18, I made a decision that I was going to do socially impactful work. And then when I discovered entrepreneurship, at that same point, I was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this entrepreneurship thing and like bend it around this social impact piece, because my professor, he was a professor at a community college, the one that I ended up having to go to when my dad took my loan money, Dr. Boykatwe. He was from Liberia, but he used to do this program called ABOY at our high school, where he met with the young Black men, you know, young Black boys, or, you know, right at like probably graduating age, like senior, and he would meet with us after school. And the whole point was, he wanted us to kind of start to understand.
Was it like a rites of passage type program?
Yeah, something like that. But he wouldn't like preach to us. He would like play games with us, where he had this one board game he played with us, in which like it was supposed to be like based off of like living in the hood, where like no matter the way it's set up, no matter what you do, you can't get out. Like, every time you get ahead, because of what you don't know, you get stuck back. You have to know how to critically think your way out. But he just did things like that with us, like twice a week or maybe once a week. But it was just like the young Black men who had shown, whether they were athletes who become the leaders in that end of things, or they were like the guys who, you know, more on the nerdy side, which was definitely me, or like the guys who were more on the popular side but knew a little bit more and were like, but just the kind of leaders from all these different cliques, if you will.
Yeah.
And kind of talking to us like, do y'all really know what it means to be a black man in America? So that context, and then the economic piece came in, and it's like, so I want to do cooperative economics. Like, that's it. Like, when all that happened, is like, this is the path I'm being led towards. And I think if more young black people saw that, because we're already in business at an early age, who were the first angels and VCs in our communities?
Right.
Promotion black people.
Right.
The drug dealers. Like, that's what that is. Whether you want to call it that or not, they are investing in the black community. It's just that they're selling the wrong product or service. Nobody is telling them you can make more money. You just like learn that there's other products and services, and it's a process. And you just haven't been given the context of what it is you're doing to run a successful operation.
Right.
And so Trep House like draw that attention to that generation where it's like everybody I say to, they're like, you say Trep House? I'm like, no, I know you thought I did, but I said Trep House. T-R-E-P.
I love to play on the word because it gets your attention first and foremost. It's a term that we're all familiar with. And it's like, it makes you lean in to go, well, wait, what are you talking about? What is this?
Exactly, precisely. Like, we the plug, same way. Like when I met, Luis, I found out the name, and I'm like, bro, like, it's like you said, it was a natural, synergy there, because that same type of approach. Like, we have to make it culturally available, because you don't see enough black entrepreneurs who can be with their hat back and and a t-shirt on, but they're they've done real estate investing, where they know a lot about it. They can get into the conversation and they can do it in a way that you can relate to. Like, that's what the lack of, it's a lack of relation. Like, why hasn't there been a startup album created? Why ain't Drake, or, T.I. or Jay or any of them, why haven't they created an album that talks about running businesses or investing in, real estate? They know about these things. Make an album that's cool about that.
Share it. Share the knowledge. No, I agree with you. I think there's this this frustration. Even with me starting the Cafecito, I had gotten frustrated because I had reached out to a lot of my friends who are filmmakers, and I mean, this is their lane. This is what they do. And I was like, oh, you guys should, talk to founders, who are right in the middle of their journey, and and they were like, I got a lot of pushback, not negative, but just, and it all made sense. But for me, I'm like, we need someone that we can listen to that's doing it. Like, when I first started in this space 2 years ago, and even though I come from a lineage of entrepreneurs, no one ever sat me down and said, look, this is going to be the hard road that you get on, and these are the challenges, and it was more so of me just seeing how it happened, seeing a lot of failure, seeing a lot of success, and ups and downs of success and failure, but never anything that I could hold on to concretely. What they did tell me, don't do it. Just once you go to school, get your education, get your degree, and then get you a cushy job and make that 6-figure. And when I started in this space, I got a lot of pushback from those same family members who actually are very successful, a lot of them, but they were like, wow, what are you doing? Like, this is hard, and you're going to struggle. But I recognized that I didn't have what I was seeking, which was someone to say, look, you should take this workshop, or you should go on this platform and take as many free courses as you can, or you should try. I had no one to really do that. I had to figure it out myself. And once I did figure it out, and that's how We the Plug got built, is because we were like, dang, instead of us talking about our community and how we're always behind the 8 ball and not as professional, let's do something about it. Let's change.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, my little sister just showed up at my house on my birthday.
Okay, listen, the Cafecito.
I'm staying on the car.
About real life. So downstairs earlier and was like doing this to me, and I'm just looking at him like, man.
Right. We're right. We all live in a real life situation here, COVID, et cetera. And I'm in my investment property because my fiance is so busy at the high rise that we stay in. With the fact that she is with the dance company, and she's rehearsing in the living room, and she's on the administrative side, so she's doing all the business dealings with like the executive team you know, on the in the living room, like from 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday. She's still like, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to turn this investment property I have here into the office. So I'm like, you know, it's really, I'm gonna keep it real. It's still in the process.
I love it.
But I got Spectrum Internet, you know, and I'm like, and there's nobody here. I got power, I got water, you know, I have everything I need to make it the office space. So this is what it is.
Tax write-off too, because space. So
yes, it's the original Trep House, the first Trep House. So yeah, no, I'm saying, like you said, I saw it, I realized it.
Yeah.
When I would talk to people about it, it was just like kind of like, you're crazy to be doing that. And like you said, I think it's like the most successful entrepreneurs on average failed 3.5 times, 3.5 ventures before they get to the one where like it starts to work.
Yeah.
And so for us in our community, we don't have the luxury of taking risk. And so if there's a risk, it's like, nah, we can't, I'm not doing that. But then for some people, it's like, it's a risk not to do it.
I was about to say, for me, I would have been troubled in my spirit.
Yes.
If I did not move forward. And the reason why I ask a lot of clients when I work with clients, because I also have my own consulting business on the side, the work that I do at Weed the Plug, but I always will ask clients, the work that you're doing, tell me about it. Is this purpose that is driven work? Is this you cannot not do it? Like it keeps you up. It disturbs you in your spirit to the point where you must acquiesce and get busy doing it. And for me, there was no other. I had to leave. Like if I did not leave, I would have. I don't know what would have happened, but I had to. I was getting pushed out. Like I had to leave. I had to go do. Because the work is bigger, and you and I have had offline conversations about this. When the work, you must do your part. So because there are hundreds of thousands, there's millions that will benefit off the Trep House and the work that you're doing now and the story that you're sharing of your journey now, like in the midst of, yo, this is what my situation, this is my new norm right now. I mean, shoot, I got a ladder that's holding up the light over here, because I'm waiting for my ring lights and all this other stuff. Because again, I was just like, it was disturbing me so much that you got to do these Cafecito. And I was like, okay, I'm a figure it out along the way. But that's that kind of obedience, discipline, and sacrifice. I tell people all the time, the three things that keep me going is obedience, discipline, favor that comes when I'm doing the work. Like the favor that comes to you when you're doing the work, because it's not always going to be a pretty experience. It's not always, even when you're like doing everything right, there's still going to be snags. But when you know that is greater than you and you're trusting in the process, the reward, is down the road, and you just keep moving until it manifests.
Yes. You can come back. Okay. My little sister said she can come back. And so on that note, I love you. So on that note, that's where, I feel like I've also had a bit of an outlier experience, because it's all these studies coming out about how athletes make great entrepreneurs. Like 40%, I think something like 40% of all successful entrepreneurs were former athletes that competed in high school or beyond. But now it's coming out that it's one set of like subjective skills athlete, which is like a team-based sport where you can have the best game of your life and your team still lose. Like y'all still lose a championship, versus being an objective athlete like a distance runner or a wrestler or anything where it's just a tennis player. You're just out there alone, golfer. Like so I was a distance runner and I was a wrestler, and both require like all kinds of like loneliness. And I mean, growing up Black, of course the distance runners aren't the ones getting the glory. Like nobody's watching you run a 6,400 meter. Like,
well, unless you the family. I know I went out and supported my little cousins, my brothers and sisters.
But let a 100-meter dash come up, and everybody's on the edge of their seats. Like, people got the attention spans of goldfish. So I'm like, okay, I got to do this for the team. I got to do this for my own glory.
Yep.
That 16 laps, I don't want to be last. Like, so I'm like, they ran 16 laps. If they finish first, why can't I finish first running 16 laps? So at that point, it was like I learned how lonely of a road it is to like do something like that. And I started making so many connections from my experience. I'm like, a lot of my peers aren't making these connections, like the objective athlete piece, the, you know, exposure to technology and immersion in it, entrepreneurship and seeing that as a way, like, and being a generalist and like absorbing information, like all those things kind of culminated. And I was just like, I get teary-eyed often, you know, because I thank the Most High for giving me that insight, like to have all those experiences and the way they came. At the time, it was like, you know, why is this like there was a time when I was like depressed because it's like I have all this information, it's just a jumble in my head, but I don't know what to do with. Like I can see the connections, but I don't know, or I can see the dots, but I don't know how to make the connections. And like over time, I just told somebody, like at 35 years old today, I can just now say, like, you know, I'm a logician when it comes to the Myers-Briggs. Like, you know, when I talk to people, I'm like, the reason I am the way I am, it seems like I'm, you know, unreliable, but it's like, no, it's actually because I'm really good at designing, architecting, whatever that is.
Yes.
Like, and that's my skill set. Like, and I'd much rather be in the lab creating than I would be trying to go out there and use it for whatever, you know, I'm planning on using it for. It's like, I'd rather pass it off to somebody and they do their thing. It's like, just cut me a little piece. I got 100 more on the shelf. Like, because I can see solutions where people just constantly see the problems. And that's my gift.
That though, like, because I can attest, I experienced depression, like even as early as like last year, like October, November, I was struggling, even though I was seemingly fine and doing work, but I was depressed. My depression came because it wasn't manifesting at the level that I expected it to. And the way I was able to get through that was I had to relinquish control of the outcome of what I thought it should be. Once I did that, then my depression lifted because it was just the heaviness that I was putting on myself to say what it was to be, which it was like, nah, like chill, like you good, like, and but that came with consciousness. That came with me reaching out to my accountability partners. You know,
yes, that's what I'm having that
depression. But talk to me about how you, because your depression that's frustrating. Like I can explain where it's like, yo, I see it, but I don't know how to get to that. Like, how did you work through that?
Mentor, you know, so like going back to I spoke about earlier. Yeah. I remember calling him one time, like this is after I had moved back from Atlanta, trying to, you know, do some business dealings, you know, with family, and it didn't quite work out because, you know, we weren't able to like see each other just as business partners because of all the history there as family members.
Sure.
And learning those, that was the whole that was a whole host of things. Like you said, I got to claim that one too. But like, and then it was like, I called Dr. Tway, and he is so succinct, but he's so powerful. Like the way he speaks about things, he doesn't have to say a lot, and he almost talks it like a whisper. But the words just like, he chooses the words so purely, like it just makes something in your soul stir, like your soul stirred. And so he just was like, it's mastery skills. Like if you were trying to get to the top of the Empire State Building, he's like, you wouldn't sit there at the first floor and wish that you were at the top. You would take the steps. You know, if the elevator was down and you wanted to see the top of the Empire State Building, what you gonna do? He's like, take step 1, take step 2, take step 3. He's like, I know you don't want to hear that, but it's your mastery skills. You have to like start from a base and work your way up just like you would a mountain. You don't just go to the top of Everest. You don't, before you even plan to climb it. Most people take, 5-10 years to plan to climb Everest before they actually climb Everest. Like, so, and so many of, people who do attempt it don't make it back. People know that going in. So it's like some people, like you said, are so driven by that passion. You have to. And that was kind of like what got me out of it. Because I'm like, I had already become like, very, very devoutly spiritual person.
Yeah.
Even, my struggles with like, my religion and, being raised in a Christian household, it was never like a denouncement of like a God. It was not even an announcement of like a Jesus. It was just like different prophets. I don't believe from being a critical thinker, there's one way to go from my house to downtown. So why would there be one way to get to God? Like, and that makes sense. Like, if that's what serves somebody, that's okay. I'm like, but I'm definitely a student of Christ, which is a state of being. The same, I'm a student of Buddha, which is a state of being. Like that was Christ wasn't Jesus' actual part of his name. It's like Buddha wasn't a part of like the original Buddha's name. Like that was his name. Buddha was in different places who had a different interpretation based off their different cultures. Like, and in that, I don't need to bicker about religion anymore. Like I know myself and my my connection to the Most High well enough that I can walk in that. And so being a distance runner and a wrestler, nobody wants to see any kid in a singlet. I'm like, I'm out by myself wrestling. Like that wasn't a sexy sport. Like, especially, if you out there diesel up, yeah, but I was in this.
I was never out there like, yay.
I'm 125. They like with a little afro with my earpieces on. So I'm like, when I say I was like a microphone. I was like a microphone.
But you did all right. You did all right.
But I had to learn, like, I'm an offbeat type of person in that way, and I became comfortable in that. So in that same vein, it's like you asked for this. You love being unique, and like all the gifts you've been given, there's consequences for every like benefit.
Yeah.
There's always equal reaction to that action. So whatever you do, whether you go the corporate route, there's consequences for that.
Yep.
If you go the business route, there's consequences for that. You go to the streets, there's consequences. Yes, it's rewards, but I learned to trade Forex. Like I started in 2006, and one of the principles I took from that was like, you always look at what you could possibly lose before you ever start counting what you might win.
Yes. That right there is a mouthful.
Yes.
That right there is a mouthful. So, and bringing this all back to, to the beginning of, me asking you, how are you doing? I mean, you are doing well, but you are doing well because you are being intentional about your wellness. You are being strategic about how you're putting together. And I think that is so important. And I know oftentimes people don't want to think that way and like, I don't need to plan out stuff. I like to flow with and I am all about I'm all about being in the flow.
Yes.
And what flow I'm in, for me is being in the will of the Father.
Yes.
When I'm flowing. But I'm very strategic about what I'm putting together for my wellness to ensure that I'm able to get to where I'm getting in as much of a whole state as possible. And you took a lot of that today. In kind of wrapping this all up, what would be, again, y'all are living in this time and space where we are dealing with this weird, lifestyle of being, well, here it's, for us in California, we are in home, we on lockdown.
Yeah.
I mean, we can still go out or whatever, but the experience is different for everyone. And even privilege is different for everyone, because there's some who still haven't gotten a check. And they've been laid off since March 13th when our state shut down. But all around the country, there's different stories and different norms. And you see people being attacked in one area of New York for not wearing their mask a certain way, and a whole 20, 30 minutes up the road, you see white people hanging out like in
mask,
of each other, no mask. In fact, police are saying, would you like a mask?
Yes.
So it's like we're really being able to see again, like we still living in a very divided, divisive type of community. And in spite of all that, again, going back to Black and brown people, we are still making it pop at what level
exactly
we are able to. So what would you say the call to action would be for those who are listening to this and are trying to figure out, okay, I've been Netflix and chilling, giving all my money to Netflix these last all my time to Netflix or YouTube or whatever. What would you say to someone who's trying to figure out what to do with this time? Because again, our new normal is not going to be back to the way it used to be, right? So what would be your call to action for those folks?
You really have to just learn to be a critical thinker. Wonder what the motive is behind the information that you get from the powers that be, what the motive always been and how that ties in. And, you know, people call you a conspiracy theorist for that, not like, you know, 5G necessarily causing issue, which I'm not, we can get into, that's a whole nother conversation. But like, if it is or not, I'm talking about real, you know, practical pieces, like the economic piece, like with this 2,000 I'm about to be getting every month that they pass that, what could I strategically be doing to prepare myself for like the things that are coming with this wave? Because a pandemic is one of 4 what they call great leveling events that from the Stone Age to the time this author wrote this book called The Great Levelers, that he determined were the only things that ever reduce inequality across the board, like the way it levels the inequality and like disparities. And that was mass mobilization wars, violent revolutions, state collapses, or pandemics. He said throughout the history, from the Stone Age, from written history to the present, those 4 things, the 4 horsemen of leveling, are the only things that ever normalize, like, you know, the equality piece again. And so we have to look at that and say, what does this mean for the Black and brown, you know, people? Because everybody has to, you know, be so focused on just survival right now, and the economic ripples from this are still going to, you know, happen. They're still going to play out. We're still only 2.5 months into this. Yeah. So I'm like, I understand, like, I mean, 2 months in really. So I'm like, this is a 2-year process for this to, you know, kind of really flatten across the globe between like the spikes that are going to happen and all the economic fallout. And in that, don't be thinking for the right now, and don't, you know, panic. The other side of this much better than you were before, because they're talking about how what's your boy's name, Bezos, you know, which is a brown brother from Cuba, as a Cuban immigrant, is about to be the world's first trillionaire as a result of what's going on. So all this, you know, just corruption and like, you know, mismanagement, all these different things happening, and you have somebody that's about to be the world's first trillionaire in the midst of it. Like, how so? It's like entrepreneurship, because he built a platform that was focused on providing people with whatever they need in mass, whatever it is. I'm on the call, man. Hold up. Hold on a second.
Y'all, this is the way it goes.
But yeah, like that great leveling piece, like we really have to get on that idea, like this is what a pandemic means. So what do we do?
Yeah, no, I love it. Great knowledge, great way to give actionable items that people can take and implement. Name the book again, the title?
The Great Levelers.
The Great Levelers by?
I can honestly see his name. Starts with the A, but if you type in The Great Levelers, it will definitely come up. Like, the portion of leveling, like, it's crazy.
I'm sure it's in the chat box, and then also on the membership page as well, because this is what I'm part of, and I am an avid reader, and so I appreciate you dropping that nugget there. So yeah, you put it in there. Perfect. Yep, The Great Levelers. All right, awesome.
Be an Afrofuturist. Be future thinking or forward thinking from an Afrocentric context. That's, you know, that number one, not just Black Panther, like in what that was meant to represent. Science fiction yes, it starts with fiction, but that often leads where the science goes or what it reaches towards. So we have to do the same thing for African culture. Like, what is the African, you know, and brown Latinx culture?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could talk to you for another hour, because I wanted to talk about the diaspora. There's so much, but we have come to time right now. But I just want to thank you for sharing, your born day with us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, the journey. Thank you for being transparent, because again, that's where I think the real impact happens for those of us who are trying to figure out which way we're to go next. And we only need to hear that next nugget of inspiration or creative ideas drop that makes us go, oh, that's it, that will get us to the next stage. So I thank you so much.
Thank you
for this time and about what's to come. So thank you, my brother, again, for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. Have a blessed rest of your day.
Thank you.